Welcome back to the Ask Lee segment. Alright, as per usual, I'm sure my regulars are tired of hearing me say this. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments to one of the Ask Lee videos and I will include them on the list and do a video. Alright, so this week's question comes from Fatass Squirrel. It's a long one, so bear with me. Regarding servitors and thought forms, when creating a thought form, what are the common symptoms regarding its creation? Would being drained and tired, mentally speaking, be a sign? I assume it's a different kind of tiredness, more similar to being around draining people or having read for 6 hours straight, a mental form of tiredness that isn't dependent on your level of sleep. I'm assuming these are all signs pointing towards a thought form taking form. And if so, what are the steps you can take to bring in more energy? I only know of meditation, Qigong. Alright, so I don't think the level of energy drainage is indicative of the formation of the servitor itself. I think what you find is that the actions you take during the creation are what causes the drainage, the energy drainage, because it also depends on what method you use to actually transfer that energy. So it's a transference. You are taking energy from one spot and you are putting it into another spot, and that forms into a body. So it's transferring that energy and then forming it, directing it, manipulating it in a certain way, programming it in a certain way with a certain intent, and it's that transference which actually causes the drainage. However, as I said, it depends on the method you use. A lot of people will use their own personal power, which means that they will take energy from their own body and they will sort of concentrate it into a particular spot, but it's taking that energy and transferring it somewhere else. Some people will, however, work with the elements. So what you do is you pull in the power from outside you, and then you concentrate it and you direct it into that spot, which isn't using your own personal power, but at the same time, depending on the method you're actually using to do that transference, could be draining. And it's not just mentally draining, it can also be physically draining, because if you are doing something which exerts you physically, getting yourself into a trance through dance, or breath work, quite forceful breath work, you'll find that physically you become drained. So it's not just a mental energy drain. Now, ways you can aid this, build the power again, build the energy up again, really is. You can go as simple as just eating and sleeping. Over time, our energy comes back. It's very similar to if you jogged somewhere and you came back and you are physically drained. Over time, the energy builds up again. So we've always got that energy build up and then release that takes place naturally and normally. There are other things, as you mentioned, meditation and Qigong. There's breath work you can do. You can do specific forms of breath work, such as the breath of fire, which circulates energy around the heavenly circuit. Qigong is excellent, but at the same time, so is yoga, Falandafa, tensegrity. All of these things are movements and exercises which are aimed at working directly with energy flow and bringing that energy flow into our bodies and storing it. And it's about hunting power. I seem to do this at this time of year. I get heavily into Castaneda's works. And in his works, in his writings, he speaks about Don Juan teaching him the gate of power, which you might want to actually give a try. So with the Gate of Power, what you do is you bend your legs, and you bend your torso forward, but your back's still straight. So you're not crouching over, you are bending forward just slightly, but your spine's still straight. And then you curl you kind of have, I can't really show you, I've not got the full view here. So you have your hands down by your sides, obviously, or sort of pushed out with your elbows in. But you curl your fingers up into your palms, and then you point your thumb and your index finger out. And you'll find this actually creates some muscular tension over here, and in the back of your hand over here. And so you hold that position with both hands, okay? And you can either jog on the spot, or you can just step on the spot, but lift your legs up your knees up quite high, and do that for a while, and see if that actually brings power back or energy back really, really quickly. There's lots and lots of different methods you can use, but it is about hunting power. You can go into nature and you can hunt power there. Finding the lines of energy that flow naturally through the land, and tapping into them. And not just, you're not going to go and drain them. It's not the idea. You exist simultaneously with these energies, with these power lines. If you go out at night time and you do hunt power, you'll probably find things like the wind or a fog or something like that are indicative of power, and this can get a bit dangerous, but if you do it right and you know what you're doing, then you can gain power from that, or hunt the power. So it really is, there's really a lot of different ways you can actually do this, but the easiest methods are things like Qigong. If you use Qigong and meditation, just carry on using them. You can obviously explore different methods, but it's something you're used to and something works for you. So when you need that energy boost, when you need to regain your energy after a long and exerting working, then you can use those methods which you are most used to. But yeah, it really is, you do feel mentally drained because you are focusing. Actually, sorry, coming back to the Gate of Power, when you're doing that, also focus, reminded me, focus sort of directly in front of you, down at the floor, and don't let your peripheral vision come in. It's a pointed focus. It's not a gaze which you engage your peripheral vision with. And you stay focused on that spot. Don't let anything distract you. You may start to see shadows and things, or dark figures and whatnot. You can also use this when you're actually on a trail, walking in nature and things like that. You can use this Gate of Power, which is very handy, very useful, and you can cover long distances very quickly with it. You'll find that if you surrender to it, you can actually walk over terrain which is quite rough and just kind of go over it, and you don't trip, you don't fall. You allow the power to actually guide you and take you. It's a very interesting technique, but anyway, back to Servitors. You do feel mentally drained because you are focused mentally, but you also, depending on, as I said, the method you're using, you can get drained physically because you are exerting yourself physically. But it really depends on what method you're using as well. And if you are specifically working with your own personal power, you'll probably find the drain is a lot more than if you were using an outside source and directing it into your body. In fact, if you are doing it that way, it's a bit like, I like to equate it with doing Reiki. When we are doing Reiki, we are channeling energy through us. And I find that when I do that, because the energy is coming into me and then going out into the person, it's still coming through me, and I get kind of a residual energy which stays behind. And after a Reiki session, I'm energized. So I find a lot of the time when I do servitor work, and I don't often do anything physical, it's more focus, breath, and actual visualization and things like that. I do find that because I work with outside elements and such things, those things come into my body, and I do feel quite energized after ritual. If it is something which I am doing which has physical exertion, that's a different story. But yeah, I think that covers it, and should give you some ideas anyway. Right, so if you've got any other questions, as always, remember to ask them in the comments, and I will get to them. Alright, so have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.